Hey there, my name is Darlin Listener. You're listening to Veiled Gaze. I get stories from people all over the world. They write to me about strange occurrences, sometimes scary ones too, and I give them the voice they need. My mama always told me that if you give something a voice, it can talk to more than just one person, so that's what I'm doing. I travel around, help out wherever I can, so if you catch me out in the wild, say hey and ask a question or two. I'm always happy to listen and talk when I can. Now, for the stories. Most of the time, before I narrate the story and give it a voice, I've managed to help the person who wrote it. If I can't help them, well, let's just say I got friends everywhere that can. Now then, this comes from a student named Bethany, who studies at one of the oldest schools in the country. So I don't really know what to say or where to begin. I guess I can start with the fact that I'm a student. I go to college. I mean, obviously, if I'm a student and I go to school, it's that's not important. Anyway, I'm studying historical literature. I know it's not really one of those majors that has a great track record for great jobs after, but I like it, you know? It's not just reading old books, it's learning history and languages and cultures. I can sink my teeth into the stories and study languages that haven't been spoken for years. History literally written down amongst pages by people who were long gone but wanted to leave a legacy, leave a piece of themselves or their experiences down for the next generation to come. You can learn so much from people that would have had no clue how long their legacy would be alive for. Sorry, I can go on like that for forever. And I guess that's not really what you want me to talk about. Yeah. So I'll skip over my tangents as best I can. I was researching for a paper I was writing about how linguistics can affect how books are written in between two different cultures, and how authors sometimes run into the roadblock of, not the paper. Anyway, I've always loved the library. It's fun, you know, being surrounded by books both new and old, knowing that you could find something unique no one else has seen for a long time. Plus, I've always felt safe, surrounded by towering bookshelves filled with words. It's like, I feel like I'm being hugged by my dad whenever I go into a library, you know? He loves books too. He's the reason I'm in this major. I want to be a researcher, like him. He studies really old books and restores them. I'm thinking of tacking on the double major with restoration. Anyway, I was in the library, studying in my usual corner. I was alone. The librarian knows me pretty well and sometimes lets me stay after closing time. So the building was empty except for me. Normally, this isn't a problem. Like I said, I feel safe with books. I've never felt scared in the library, but something was different about that night. I was reading this book, and it had this passage I didn't really understand, though I was translating it from Occitan to Old English, and then from there to Modern English. When I think, I usually talk out loud if something is challenging, so I read the passage out. Then I felt wrong, like I was sitting in smoke. It wrapped around me. There wasn't anything there, but I swear I felt suffocated by the feeling. It just felt wrong. I couldn't breathe. I could barely see. I got up and I had to leave. I knew that I needed to leave right now, so I tried to walk to the door, but I couldn't. I fell and the floor felt wrong. I know it sounds crazy, but this whole thing is crazy. I've laid on that floor before. I've taken naps on it during finals. It's carpet, the kind that seems to be in like every library. It's not soft, but it isn't uncomfortable. It just is. When I fell, though, my cheek pressed into the ground. It was like I was laying in sand. It was soft and cushiony and warm. Then I blinked, and I wasn't staring at the red and blue carpet of the library. I was staring at sand. It wasn't like I just got outside without realizing it. I picked up my head, and the library was still there, but now it was unbelievably bright, like there was a miniature sun hiding around the edges of each bookshelf. Sand wasn't the only thing, though. There was stone, too, scattered around like the sand had started to bury a foundation that had been there before. There was moss on the bookshelves and on the tables, and it smelled musty, like there hadn't been anyone inside for years. I managed to stand, drug myself up with a table, and I felt like I'd just run a marathon. My legs were shaking, and my chest was heaving with the effort of breathing. The book I was reading was a journal about the experiences of this author throughout a war-torn country and how it was affecting the local language. It was still open to my page, but there was sand and moss inside it, flecked and scattered along the words like I hadn't just been holding it, and there was blood, too. Like smears of blood. Smoke and dust filled the air, but it felt different, like a haze. So I grabbed my bag, and I have a ton of books in there, so I knew it was heavy enough to knock someone out if I needed to. I was confident in my ability to defend myself for some reason. So I started going around and peeking through all the bookshelves. I was trying to find the door to the library, but it seemed bigger somehow. It wasn't the same library I'd just been in, kind of bigger. Even the bookshelves were bigger, stretching high until they nearly reached the ceiling. I explored for a while, but I couldn't see anyone else, and I couldn't see where the light was coming from. The whole library seemed to not end. I've been through that whole building. I know it better than I know my apartment. I know it's not that big. And as I walked, I got confused as to where I was. Eventually, I had to sit down. I got so dizzy, so I leaned against a bookshelf. The smell of books and moss and smoke was so strong and nauseating. I didn't know what to do, or I didn't know anything. Then I started to hear it. Whispers. Telling me secrets, knowledge, all the things I ever wanted to know, to learn. Other languages. I swear I could almost see the scholars who'd written the book standing in front of me, could almost see myself at a desk writing my own. I felt warm, loved, needed. I saw my mom. She was sitting beside me. She had a book in her hand and a warm smile on her face, and she was alive and there. She reached up, started playing with my hair. I felt her hand. I didn't want her to go, but something still felt wrong. It was like I was staring at water or a mirage. It didn't look right. I wanted my dad. I wanted his warm hug, his cocoa, his brownies. I needed my dad. That got me struggling, but it felt like I was moving through tar. Nothing really responded to me. My legs, my arms, nothing. My mom, she looked mad at me. Her hand went to my shoulder and it felt like a vice. It hurt. I tried to scream and her face melted. It warped her features until it looked like a fleshy mask was covering bone. She opened her mouth, but all that came out was this horrible screeching sound. I reacted before I could think, grabbed my bag and slammed it into her. She vanished, and so did the whispers. So did that awful screech. I slumped back against the bookshelf. I was more exhausted. I could barely even breathe. But I knew I needed to stand. I needed to move to get away. The smell got stronger, and I swore it was shrouding me, blurring my vision. It almost felt like I was being taken apart from the inside out. There was just this pull, this drag, almost in my chest, like someone was pulling me. Finally, I was able to snap to my senses. I knew that I didn't want to smell that heavy smell anymore, and without anything else to do, I grabbed a book from the bookshelf and I yanked on it. It took a few tries, and when it came away, it did so with a tearing feeling, like I was yanking on a nail. Then I threw it. Somehow, the smell faded, so I did it again, and again, and again, until the smell had faded enough for me to stand, but I had to yank myself from the bookshelf. It had been pulling me in. I don't know, it was like quicksand or something. There was an indent of where I'd been sitting, and once I finally yanked myself away, it started to fill itself in again. The space that the books had left was weirdly red, and it almost looked like I'd torn off skin. Then I saw a finger. Just a finger buried in the wood, exposed bone and all. Was that what the bookshelf was going to do to me? I almost puked. The smell wasn't helping, so I pulled my shirt over my nose and I started running. I almost felt drunk. The books I'd torn off the shelves looked weird and fleshy. There was torn sinew and skin just hanging off of the edges. I had to get out, but I didn't know where to go, so I just kept moving forward. Then the bookshelf started vibrating. Books started falling off the shelves. Well, not falling, launching. It was like they were aiming at me. Some of them hit me, and I had to start actually running as best I could. As I was running, I started seeing bones in the spaces that the books left. Skeletons, blood, skin. It was horrible. It was like bodies had been pressed inside the shelves, like, I don't know, fertilizer for the books? Food? I don't know. The bodies that weren't just bones didn't look like they were decomposing. More like chunks were being taken off, like they were being eaten. It was horrible. I didn't know what else to do, but I had the feeling the book I'd been reading had something to do with it. So I ran back to where I'd been. I don't know how I found it, but I did. The book was still there. I reached for it, and the moment I touched it, time just stopped. The books that had been launching at me were frozen in midair, like someone was holding them. The page of the book was still open to the one I'd been reading, and what I'd read aloud was translated for me. As I gain this knowledge, so do I give my soul to what grants it. It was something about the author speaking to a wandering trader, trading one thing for another in terms of knowledge and wealth. There wasn't much else in that passage besides something at the very bottom that I read aloud the moment I figured out what it was saying. Knowledge gained, my soul returns. Then I fell. I was out before I could even hit the ground. I don't know how long I was asleep for, but it must have been hours, since the next thing I knew, I was waking up to a pitch-black library with my phone ringing. My roommate had gotten worried, so she'd called me wondering where I was. If she hadn't, I might have slept until the library opened again. I don't know who to really tell other than you about all this. I told my dad, of course. He's the one who recommended I write to you and give you the book. He said you'd probably recognize it. If nothing else, you'd know what to do with it. So I've sent it and my story to you. Well, you already know that, but thank you for listening, or reading, I guess. Just, thanks. Bethany. Well, this certainly sounds familiar to me. I've spent many nights reading things I shouldn't and getting into all sorts of trouble. I definitely did know the book Bethany sent to me. I've read some of the authors' other works too and gotten transported to all sorts of odd places. This might be one of the tamer ones I've come across, but it's no less dangerous than any of the other work. The community decided to nickname the author the Wanderer, as the author was usually in these places first before they got around to writing about him. I'm glad you made it out safely, Beth. Knowledge gained is a powerful thing, but it's no use to anyone if you're too dead to do anything about it. Now, for my listeners out there, Beth is alive and well. I was also able to send her a ring that'll help her stay where she wants to in case she comes across anything else during her midnight readings. My advice to you, darlings, if you find some kind of book that sets off tingles or just don't quite feel right, be very wary of reading from it. Not all of them require spoken word to do their magic. Search for knowledge, yes, but be careful where you get it. The kind of power knowledge can bring, well, it can eat people alive. My best, Darlin Listener.